This session, you introduced House Bill 2337, which would create the Washington Social Investment Committee. Explain this legislation for us.
Well, I got the idea for the legislation after reading about a lot of the innovative work going on in other states last summer. And there's actually an idea that comes out of the United Kingdom of what's called social impact bonds. In many of the states, it's called a pay-for-success model, where a private investor can come in and put money behind a human services program, typically that is preventative in nature. So we're talking about homelessness prevention, recidivism reduction for prisoners, early childhood development type issues, poverty reduction kinds of things. Very often in government, we've turned to bureaucracies to solve these problems. And we've got to think outside of that model. We've got to think about how can we engage the private sector in solving some of these problems. So investors can actually compete to get a return on their investment if there's demonstrated savings to the state after a period of time. And so that's the idea that we're going to explore under my legislation.
Is this model being tried elsewhere?
It's being tried right now in Massachusetts, Minnesota, Utah, New York City. New York City is doing a really interesting program in partnership with Goldman Sachs. Fresno, California is trying it now. There's a bill going through the California legislature this session looking at this. And there's a number of people interested in trying something like this in Washington State. And when we had the bill hearing last week, it was one of the most diverse sets of stakeholders that I've seen on any kind of bill. You had free market advocates, you had human services advocates, you had investors, philanthropists, a wide array of people who are interested in doing this new kind of thing that really incentivizes results rather than building new bureaucracies.
What has been the reception to the legislation thus far?
It's been received enthusiastically. It passed out of committee with overwhelming support and now moves on to the Appropriations Committee, where I hope similar kind of support and look forward to moving it through the process. It's brought together people on the left and the right, middle, and I think this is the kind of discussion we need to be having. All my bill does is it sets up the Washington Social Investment Steering Committee to take a look at what's the best financial model for Washington State, and then it takes a look at what might be the first pilot project we set up and develops a plan to implement that, and then it's up to the legislature as to whether we actually implement that.
Has the media shown an interest in this idea?
We've had coverage from the Seattle Times, from NPR, we've had coverage from the Council on State Governments and from the Washington Policy Center, and there's a very lively discussion going on in academic circles, in human services circles, and among think tanks. The Reason Foundation has given coverage to this idea and has particularly noted the bill that we're working on here in Washington State, but been focused on this idea in general as it's been tried in other states. And so there's a lively discussion going on about this all across the country, and now Washington State is getting in on the action. So it's really fun to be at the center of that.